The new motivational book, Get Out the Box and Get a Life, with me, Karita D, approaches taboo topics that we need to talk about, but for some reason, we just can't. In my new book, Get Out the Box and Get a Life, I wanted to deal with real issues that affect us every day. That's why I included the domestic abuse box. Christians are not exempt from domestic abuse. Domestic abuse happens to us physically, emotionally, and mentally. And the only thing I hear people say about it is get out or stop. What happens if you don't know how? You know, most of us who've experienced domestic abuse have been labeled as weak or crazy. Let me tell you something. No one is exempt from this box. I share very candid experiences of my life of some horrific domestic abuse stories, only because I want you to understand how important we are to God and that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. If we could really wrap our minds around how wonderful we are, then anyone coming into our lives that attempt to hurt us, we would take action immediately. Hey, listen, I'm talking to you, the domestic abuser. We don't feel loved when you hit us. We feel violated, ashamed, intimidated, and manipulated. You can't expect us to love you when you pinch or squeeze or beat, rape, berate, or degrade us. You can only expect a spirit of murder to come in. Hey, if you don't believe me, go ask some of the women in prison. You send a message to our children that this is their legacy for the future. And more importantly, you send a message to God that the ones whom He made to be the caretakers of your home, the vessels for your children, the joint heirs with Christ, are not even worth to be treated well. In this book, I show you some of the steps needed to get out of domestic abuse. God has not forgotten you. One of the first steps is to recognize the signs. Years ago, my pastor shared this, and he said that when you leave your wife and refuse to tell her where you're going, then you are emotionally abusing her. Isn't that funny? Women are nurturers, and we will worry if you don't come home. Why would you want to intentionally put someone who is bone of your bone and flesh of your flesh through this? What kind of sick satisfaction do you get out of seeing us worry? Why would you want to break our skin when it was designed to lay against your body and minister to you? Why would you want to break our spirit when it is that same spirit that enters God's throne room to pray for you? Another step out of the domestic abuse box is don't fall for the bribes. The price is too high. I share my personal examples of years ago when I lived with a man he had never been abusive. He was only angry all the time. Well, after 3 years, we had a disagreement. I walked away, and within minutes, he flipped me upside down and held me outside the second floor window. I literally thought my head would hit the pavement. And at that moment, in a split second, I promised God that if He brought me out of that alive, I would not go back to him. Well, I did end the relationship, and he did come back. Of course, he was sad and crying and offered me a Jaguar, a huge home, and this huge diamond. Hey, I passed. I had not come back to God yet, but I did understand that the price I would ultimately pay would be too high, possibly my life. Listen, if you really want to see God's love for you, then don't fall for bribes. No one in this world can give you more than God. If the enemy could offer the world to Jesus and He could pass up on it, surely we can pass up the big homes, the fancy cars, and the cash in order to live a good life. You know, I share some wisdom nuggets to help you in this area. And one of them is never start a relationship when your life is on a downward swing. You know why? Your judgment will be off. Once again, you'll be a prime target for people who want to abuse you and use you. Hey, I believe that when you see something that will hurt you, run. This is something God tells us to do. I remind you in this book that we are joint heirs with Christ. What queen gets up every day to rule her country with a black eye or bruises? What kind of kingdom would that be? Listen, ladies, humility is not stupidity. Dignity requires that you make good decisions about your vessel. Jesus paid a high price for it. In this book, I use myself as an example to let you know that it's okay. You're not the only one. Just know that at least one person is not judging you. It doesn't matter if you are the abuser or the abused. You can get out the domestic abuse box and get a life. Order your copy of my new book, Get Out the Box and Get a Life, with me, Karita D, for only $24.99. Call 1-800-526-6093. Call now and receive a bonus motivational CD where I will talk directly to you. Word is spreading quickly about my new book, Get Out the Box and Get a Life, with me, Karita D.